Critics and girls hate me.
This is I Don't Even Own a Television. Get in the van.
There are books that are good, there are books that are bad. There's some books so fucking awful you wish you never had read them at all. Cause a novel can ruin your life. Hey buddy, I don't even own a television.
All right, welcome to I Don't Even Own a Television. It's a podcast about bad books. I am JW, a creeping sense of nihilism Friedman.
And I am Chris in the van collision. Vroom.
And we're here this time around. Oh, Happy New Year, everyone, by the way. I believe.
Yeah, this will come out in the new
cool.
year.
So Happy New Year. It's 2020. Hopefully it will be a good one for all of you, and you won't be nearly as depressed as the person who wrote the book we're talking about this time around, which would be a famous singer, a songwriter, spoken word artist, poet,
raconteur, occasional actor.
Yeah, none other than Mr. Henry Rollins. However, at the point of this book, Henry Rollins, circa age 21 through 23.
Yep.
Which is not a pleasant place to be, apparently.
Yeah. The pains of being a football player-shaped white guy in his early 20s.
Well, dude, I mean, it's really hard when you're in a rock band and you have to travel around all the time and play music in front of people.
Yeah, and then sometimes say stories at people.
Yeah.
Because he's not quite sure what to call it through the course of this. We'll get to it. He's embarking upon his burgeoning spoken word career.
Which I think, he's always been very good at. And I think that's what kind of led to some misconceptions about this book that I had going in. That I once read it and enjoyed it. Because I remember when you suggested this, I was like, that sounds like fun. I loved this book back in the day. I did really like this book back in the day.
Right.
However, this is probably the least fun I've had reading a book in a long time. It actually left me depressed for like 2 or 3 days afterwards.
I had never read this book. It will not surprise anybody to know that Black Flag, the band Henry Rollins is singing for at the time of this book, it's basically an extended tour diary. We should say that.
Yeah.
These are journal entries from roughly 81 to roughly 86.
Yeah.
And most of it's tour. When he's on tour, he's very depressed. When he's not on tour, he's even more depressed.
Yeah.
And like I said, it won't surprise anybody to know Black Flag, big influence on me. I have the Black Flag bars tattoo. Yes, I'm one of those guys. Sorry, but I never read this book. And let me tell you something. A good way to read Get in the Van for the first time is not over the space of 2 days as a man in his mid-40s.
Very, very true. I think I loved this. Reading this gave me flashbacks to sitting on the porch of my Florida house, which would have been early 20s, and I think I was reading this at the same time as I was listening to a lot of his spoken word.
Right.
So I had the context of, this guy grows up to be a lot happier and a lot more comfortable in his own skin. But when you're not simultaneously consuming that other medium, what you essentially have is like a first-person narrative of a very, very depressed person who doesn't want to acknowledge that he's depressed.
We should say at this point, since we haven't said it before, there's no way to talk about this book without giving a bit of a content warning. Self-harm is one of his major topics. This is also a guy who thinks images of violence are the kind of shocking that's fun to put out into the world, particularly or also including sexual violence.
Yeah.
There's also a truly shocking amount of what I would call fat shaming throughout the book. That was a surprise.
It doesn't really,
not a welcome one.
I wouldn't say it surprised me, but yeah, it's a little gross.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is definitely the type of dude who would tell you at any point, like, your body is a machine and you need to keep it in peak performance, which, is silly teenager shit.
Yeah.
There's also some brief examples of homophobia, some casual transphobia. It's basically the mind of a shitty, self-centered 21-year-old circa the early 80s.
So luckily, if you're any human on this planet other than me, you already know whether or not you want to read this book. And if you want to read it, you have already read this book. So we don't need to warn you away from it, except I'm going to. Don't read this book. Do something else with your time, especially because there doesn't appear to be an audio version available. So sitting down physically and having to read this was such a chore. I am the only person in America who ever spent significant time in late 2019 thinking, I wish I could just be hearing Henry Rollins talk instead of doing what I'm doing.
Oh, I can't imagine how embarrassing it would be for grown-up Henry Rollins to have to record an audiobook of this.
You know what, my friend? That is a heaping helping of not my problem.
But anyway, I guess before we get much deeper into the contents of the book, let's do away with the segment. Or let's go ahead and... fuck it, hey. I wanted to do away with this segment. You have other ideas.
Yeah, so, you know what? We hear a lot about Plot in 60. Mainly the problem is that I don't take it seriously enough. And you know what? Guilty. Aside from physically reading the book and the commute, doing a good job, what I think of as a good job on Plot in 60 is by far the most difficult and time-consuming part of the show for me. So I've been slacking. That's not untrue. However, my commitment is to really try to take Plot in 60 seriously in 2020. I'm bringing it back.
Okay.
I'm restoring honor to the Plot in 60 seconds concept. That's my promise.
Okay, well, if you want to keep it, then here's that song.
You got 60 seconds. Scream in the shout. 60 seconds. Don't let them down. You got 60 seconds. Open your mouth and tell them what the goddamn book's about.
And luckily, this isn't even a real book, so it doesn't have a plot. So instead, I wrote a poem. Are you ready?
Yep.
Great.
Okay.
Tell me when I have 60 seconds.
Begin.
I'm a young, skinny white guy who works out a lot. I'm in a band. I hate cops. I hate myself. I hate people who tell me what to do. I'm 22. My band is always on tour. Tour is like war. I'm like a soldier. I like violence. I hate cops. I hate myself. I think it's real edgy to say shitty things about people. I think edge is importance. I think it's edgy to call people fat. I'm a skinny white man. I work out a lot. I feel bad. My feelings are bad. I inflict bad feelings on audiences. I hate audiences. I love being alone. I love being by myself. I hate myself. I hate cops. I hate being alone. I sleep in a shed. The shed belongs to my boss's parents. I am free. I am 23. I'm a soldier. I do violence. I go on tour. I do mind violence on stage. I hate the audience. I hate myself. I like girls. Girls don't like me. I hate girls. I hate liking girls. I like hating girls. I like hating. I hate myself. I'm on tour. Tour is war. I'm 24.
It's pretty good.
There. Now you've read this book and it only took you 60 seconds.
That's pretty accurate. So, what's really interesting about this book is it spans the beginning of the band until 1986 or so. And from 1981 to 1982, I guess, Rollins wasn't that into journaling his tour escapades. So what you get is grown man Rollins talking in the past tense about shows that they played.
Right. And
so I was reading that and thinking, this is a little drier than I remembered, but this is pretty entertaining. I mean, there's some cool stories here. I can see why I like this. And then suddenly the journals appear around page 1983. And that's when you start getting these, I don't know how to put it. Actually, I do know how to put it because he describes it himself many times. You get a teenager, basically, I mean, he's 21 or something, attempting to write like Henry Miller about being in a punk rock band.
3 pages before he name checks Henry Miller, I'm like, oh God, this is like bad Henry Miller. And I should say that for me, that means something because Henry Miller is probably my least favorite major writer of all time. I hate reading Henry Miller. And I hate this even more.
Yeah, I mean, there are like literal like love notes to Henry Miller. Like whenever I'm done with a Henry Miller book, it's like leaving a friend behind and stuff like that. And yeah, cool dude. I'm glad you have one influence for your writing, but it's a little intense because it leads to prose that is filled with stuff like, hang on, I'm trying to find something here. This is one of those books where I just have too many highlights because there are just too many hilarious things, but there's sentences like, laughing at me is like laughing at thin air. It makes me want to move to a place where no one lives. Tonight hurt a lot. Sometimes I'm almost afraid to play because it hurts so much. Like, ooh, congratulations, Mr. Deep.
Yeah.
And you lose track really fast because this book is so nihilistic and just kind of generally negative. You lose track really fast of the fact that what you've essentially got is a dude in a punk band that's on tour a lot, writing about playing shows.
And a lot. We shouldn't discount that. They go on one 4-month tour where they play all but like 10 or 15 days of that 100 days.
I'd say they're playing about 300 days a year at the low end, probably, and doing a lot of it. But you could, I mean, I don't want to call any veracity into question, and I don't want to call the veracity of someone's quote-unquote, like inner monologue into question. But sometimes you definitely get the feeling that a lot of these emotions are being exaggerated for the sake of storytelling. Because there's points in this book where he talks about, hearing voices, having conversations with himself, like, I don't want to do anything except for hurt somebody or hurt myself, and like things like that. And it's like, meanwhile, he's a 21-year-old in a rock band that's on tour, not seeking help, and it's a little weird.
And by the end of the book, one of his major gripes is doing lots of interviews.
Oh, well, it's great because they get more popular over the course of the book. So, yeah.
I mean, they were never a huge band, but by the time they broke up, by the time Black Flag broke up, Henry Rollins has written, I think, a monthly column for a year in Spin magazine. He's been interviewed by every major and minor rock magazine multiple times.
And he's doing a slate of what he still hasn't figured out what to call at this point. He refers to as talking shows, which are essentially spoken word performances with people like Exene Cervenka and Lydia Lunch and stuff like that. So I would say, while not a huge band that you were ever going to hear on the radio, they had very much ascended to the upper echelon of popularity, both the band and Henry as a person. So his gripes go from like, well, we didn't eat again today, which sucks. I mean, I've been in a band that did that, and we didn't go out on tour nearly as much as they did, and it sucked. And that's the sort of thing I would gripe at. But it goes from that to like about 100 pages of, I can't even find a place to sit alone without someone asking for my fucking autograph. I want to slam their head against the table. It's just like, dude, fucking chill. Like, please. It's really, really... My fans are the worst. They won't leave me alone. I don't trust any of them. You're all just going to steal from me. You want to steal my soul. You want an autograph that you can show your friends because you're a lousy piece of shit with no worth? Well, here's your autograph. Fine, you piece of shit. It's all stuff like that.
I'm looking for the quote. I can't quite find it, but there's something like, this photographer came and told me I should be a model. Told me I looked like a model. I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know how to take that. Now I'm done.
Oh, there's also a lot of stuff where he complains.
Cool humble brag.
There's a lot of stuff where he complains about things that he's obviously super stoked about. And I don't want to spoil a future segment, but I will in one of them where he's like, the local newspaper compared me to Jim Morrison and Henry Miller. And it's like, yeah, and you fucking loved it, dude. Don't deny it.
Okay. I know. Okay, I found it. In a diner somewhere in West Virginia. The last few days, let's see. Played in Charlotte at the Milestone. Another show at the Milestone. Did a long photo session with this lady from Spin. She'd taken all these pictures of Sting and people like that. She told me that I was very handsome and stuff. She made me work. I never did a photo session like that before. I felt like some kind of model or something. Pretty stupid. And like you can just hear the, teen boy like, it's wait, oh shit, fuck, crap, hell, what's the least cool thing you can possibly do? Is it still admit you enjoyed something? Yes? Okay, I'm just going to say what I feel and then say, pretty stupid after it. That should get me off the hook. Nobody will crack that code. Nobody will know what my intense man feelings are like.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, this is the early 80s. Punk rock is still defining itself. DIY music is definitely still defining itself. But, I mean, there are several, I recommended Our Band Could Be Your Life on the last show.
I think that's what put this back in my head, actually.
There are stories of bands from this same era that went on tour and seemed to do it without killing themselves the way Black Flag did. They were working extra hard for sure, but you didn't have to do this. Right. I mean, I guess they took the Minutemen on their first tour, and the Minutemen, are really not given a very fair treatment in this book, I feel like, until one of them dies.
Right.
But like Mike Watt, the amazing musician Mike Watt, is mostly referred to as talking too much and being annoying, which I don't know whether that's true or not, but there's nothing else mentioned about him in the book other than he talks too much. And if you don't let him say what you're going to listen to in the van, he'll call you a fascist.
Which I esteem no person in the world quite as much as I esteem Mike Watt. I also have very little problem imagining that 25-year-old Mike Watt would 100p call you a fascist if you popped his tape out of the deck.
But yeah, I mean, the point being is that, a lot of their contemporaries that they mentioned in this book, like the Meat Puppets and I almost said Firehose, and the Minutemen have also, pretty documented touring careers around that period of time. It's not necessarily like Black Flag was the first band to go play punk shows on the road.
Right.
You really get the feeling that Henry Rollins wants you to think that, or wanted you to think that, at least at the time.
Yeah.
And he wanted to portray it like this, like wild, uncharted territory, like they're going into war and they're gonna go fuck with the squares, man, and bring it to people like it's never been brought before. When in actuality, there were plenty of other groups doing this. The difference being is that most of them didn't antagonize audiences intentionally as quite as much as Black Flag did.
One of the things that's kind of a subtle undercurrent of this book is he's constantly talking about getting hit in the head or about falling down and hitting his head.
Yeah.
And how he's got real bad insomnia. And I think a lot of the flying off the handle and rage issues, and basically the book is sort of 200 pages of tantrum spread out over 300 pages.
Yeah.
Many of those 100 pages that aren't tantrum are show flyers or photographs.
That's true.
And the rest is mostly weird crushing on Diamanda Gallas, which I did not expect.
Yeah, and like really teenage boy crushing on Diamanda Gallas. Like, she has the most piercing eyes. They're so beautiful. She always looks mad at you, and then she breaks into a smile, and it's like angels singing from heaven.
Yeah. Is it Gallas? I don't know.
I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
So there's so much of that, but a lot of it makes a lot more sense if you're like, oh, this guy has undiagnosed like post-concussion syndrome and definitely needs to do a little bit better job of sleep hygiene.
Yeah, well, I mean, he literally describes getting concussed without using the word concussion probably about 20 times in this book, which is over the course of 5 years. So he's got like football player levels of concussions happening, usually by running his head into a guitar or falling off a stage or something. And it's like, there's definitely a lot of concussed thoughts happening. And they're just right there on the page.
Yeah.
It should be mentioned, as we said, we can't talk about this book without talking about self-harm.
Right.
This is a dude who also used to get psyched up for shows by cutting himself with broken glass and stuff like that, so he'd be angry because he had to be angry to bring it to the audience the right way. And it's like, amazingly, Mike Watt and D. Boone never did that. The Meat Puppets never did that. I don't recall stories about Milo from the Descendants harming himself in order to get ready to bring it to a crowd or whatever. Just saying.
Yeah, I think that's all pretty fair. Should we do some high points, low points?
I guess we should, or I'll just ramble for hours. So let's do high points, low points. Here's a song.
High points are high,
And the points are low.
high points.
Low points, get ready to go.
All right, Collision, high points. You want to start us off?
Yes, I will start us off. He's complaining about the PA. This is very early on in the book. This is in that section that you were talking about where it's 10 years later, Henry coming back and basically manufacturing journal entries that he didn't actually take at the time.
So there's a lot of descriptions of the shows and a lot less of the weird random U-turns into self-hatred and things like that.
Yeah. Well, a lot fewer Travis Bickle monologues.
Exactly.
And he's complete. This is 1982. He can't hear the PA, so he ends up singing "Fix Me" over "Clocked In." Now, the specifics don't really matter all that much, but this was a band that legendarily would be forced to practice by their guitar player and kind of head honcho, Greg, for 8 hours a day. And everybody I know who likes Black Flag knows that factoid. And only one or two people I know have ever said, why did you have to practice that much to play those songs like that?
And I think the answer is because you kept hiring people like Henry Rollins. But yeah, I see what you're getting at.
But if you have to practice for 8 hours a day and still can't tell the difference between "Fix Me" and "Clocked In," you got some problems. And that was just a colossal high point for me. That was the second funniest joke in the entire book.
As a man who has been on stage with, many bands, including some pretty loud bands, the PA is mostly there so the singer can hear himself or herself sing and make sure that their vocals are in tune. Occasionally in your monitor feed, you might get some drums in your monitor. You might get some guitar in your monitor. But it's not like you're going to be standing on stage and not hear the amplifiers behind you.
Right.
There is absolutely no way that a PA is going to be responsible for you not knowing what song is being played at any point in time. I know plenty of bands who practice without a PA.
Right.
So, yeah, that's on you, Henry. It probably has something to do with you, like doing a backflip off of the stage onto a skinhead the night before. Because that sort of shit happens a lot. Right. But yeah, that is pretty good. I have a pretty similar first high point here. Which is about Dez, who was an earlier member of the band who was smart enough to get out before the tour schedule got ridiculous.
Also, thing I didn't realize, this is a lavishly illustrated ebook version. Dez was kind of a fox.
Yeah, well, Dez was the one guy that didn't look like he had just crawled out of the gutter in this band. But he was on their first European tour with the Minutemen, actually. And it says, Dez had some fun with one of the punkers. He put a ZZ Top tape into the community blaster. All the punkers started yelling at him. Dez told him that the tape was the new Exploited album. The punkers were stupid. They all believed him. One guy started crying. No shit. Now, I don't know if the guy crying is true or not. I kind of doubt the veracity of that.
And then everybody at the GameStop stood up and cheered.
I love the idea of convincing a bunch of holier-than-thou punk rockers from 1984 that a ZZ Top record is the new Exploited. Because those are the exact type of people that would get really upset about that kind of thing and never go to an Exploited show again. And, if the Exploited never had people go to their shows, they would have been a much better band because they would have stopped after 6 months. That's right. I said it. I don't like bands that put weird swastikas on things. Controversial opinion.
Whoa.
Which means, according to this book, I've got a lot of problems with Henry Rollins when he was in his 20s as well.
Yeah, we'll probably get to that later. Henry Rollins' deep enthusiasm for the first ZZ Top album, which is mentioned, I believe, more than 3 times over the course of this book, is actually one of the more charming things about him.
I agree. I also think ZZ Top has one of the best album titles for their first album, which is ZZ Top's First Album, which is just a great name for a debut record. Tells you exactly what you're getting.
I think what people need to more closely or carefully or clearly label is the second album. Because you know what they say, you have your whole life to write your first album. You have 6 months to write your second. And that's why the second one is usually a little thinner soup.
Well, I mean, it's pretty easy if you're just ripping off Muddy Waters but putting distortion on it. So, no, I love
that explains their longevity.
I love ZZ Top, but I am not gonna sit here and pretend like they did anything particularly mind-blowingly creative.
I mean, you are a rough boy.
Yeah, I have a beard, and I enjoy the blues rock stylings of ZZ Top. However, I think you have to admit that mostly where they were coming from is a similar place as, say, like Led Zeppelin, which is taking music made by African Americans and sanitizing it for a white audience, which is, it's unfortunate, but it's true. I think that's kind of hard to argue with.
Yeah.
I'm sure some people will argue with me about it, but I don't care. I say this as a fan, so it is what it is.
I don't think anybody can. I don't think Billy Gibbons would argue with you.
I actually think Billy Gibbons would probably be like, yep, that's pretty much what we did, because he's known for being a very self-aware dude when it comes to his music. So, yeah. Okay, well, low points. It's time to pick from the fucking Wheel of Fortune here.
Not going to be one of the short episodes if we spend too much time on low points, so I'll try to make this quick. Henry spends a lot of time walking around L.A. He walks down to the post office a lot. He walks to the practice space a lot. He walks to the recording studios a lot and makes sure to write down what happens to him. And he had this following thing. Today I was walking past the house. Big Dog was out there putting a nice finish on that stylin' caddy. A wide-eyed blonde-haired girl was holding a rag for him. I loved how she watched him wax the Big Dog mobile. She looked at me. I kept moving before I started laughing. Today they were playing Jimi Hendrix. The song was If 6 Was 9. I passed the house at the point where Hendrix says, white-collared conservatives flashing down the street, pointing their plastic finger at me, hoping soon my kind will drop and die. Big Dog is singing along. I kept on walking as usual. And I really, this was a major low point for me because, like, I highlighted that, I grabbed my notebook, I'm all ready to just, like, rip him a new one for being so upset that squares like Hendrix. But I am more than twice as old as he was when he wrote those words, and it is still surprising and disappointing to me that people who like the stuff I like aren't like me. And that realization was not one I needed to have the day after fucking Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't mention that he calls this guy Big Dog because he has a personalized license plate that says Big Dog.
Well, I was trying to keep it short, but...
which is pretty great, actually. That's kind of more of a high point. And you also didn't mention where he's walking from, which I guess is my first low point in this book.
Where is he walking from?
Well, he's walking from the shed, as he refers to it, which is literally a shed in the backyard of his boss slash bandmate, Greg Ginn. Is it Ginn or Jen? I'd never known that. Greg Ginn's parents' house, because Greg lives with his parents and his brother, I think, Raymond Pettibon, who's famously... the artist who did a lot of Black Flag's very disturbing artwork. This book is peppered with it. I really have never liked his art. It freaks me out, but he is undoubtedly talented and very prolific.
He is actually one of my favorite artists. This was an era in his development where he was very much into shock for shock's sake.
Yeah.
And it is wildly disturbing to flip through like there's a whole run in this that's... I will say very clear depictions of misogyny, at very least.
Yeah.
Whether or not they are themselves misogynistic, I'm not going to take a position right now.
Yeah, it's art, and so that's a really hard discussion to have about visual art. But yeah, it is very clear. I think you said it right on the money there. There are depictions of misogyny. It's a blast of about 20 pages of different flyers for Black Flag shows that all have these very disturbing images. It's hard to get past. But anyway, the point I'm making is that Henry Rollins is living in the backyard of this house. Owned by his boss, as you put it, or actually more accurately, owned by his boss's parents.
Right.
And writing these screeds about self-reliance. So this is essentially the punk rock version of On Walden Pond.
He's a little punk rock Thoreau.
He's like, people out there need to learn how to live with nothing and how to learn how to live with themselves. He writes in the backyard of his boss's parents' house.
Yeah.
Like, it's a little silly, makes it a little hard to take seriously when you take a step back and remember that the shed was an outbuilding in the back of a house owned by a relatively rich family.
Also, it's really hard because the word shed has been slightly corroded by that TV ad about a she shed.
Oh, my she shed burned down.
Yeah, so I'm constantly like throughout this book, every time he datelines his journal entry as shed, I'm like, oh, right, he lives in a he shed.
Yeah, he shed. I mean, the thing is, too, is I don't know that much about the inner workings of the members of Black Flag's out of Black Flag's life, other than Henry Rollins. But I do not get the impression that Greg necessarily came from a poor family. And I'm willing to bet that the shed was probably a lot larger and a lot nicer than what you're thinking of in your house when you hear the word shed.
That's an interesting point. I literally pictured throughout not a tough shed. Like, I thought the walls were probably wood.
Yeah.
But
like
yeah,
a tool
that
shed
is a
or
good
something.
point. Yeah, yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised if the shed could be more accurately described as an outbuilding of some sort. There's enough room for him to lay down, stretched out, and Henry Rollins not a small man.
Oh, he's not a small man.
So, yeah, and you know what's weird about this book too that I didn't notice is he only mentions working out like 3 or 4 times. You know, he mentions throughout the entire book, I'm doing all this stuff, I'm doing all that stuff, blah blah blah. I hate myself, yada yada. But like he never mentions his workout regime, even though the pictures you see him gradually turn from this skinny dude into this hulking Danzig-esque maniac.
Yeah.
Like where he's like just a man of muscle made of meat. And I think it's kind of interesting that he never includes any of that in his journal entries, specifically because I think Henry Rollins was engaged in what we would now describe as a very primitive exercise in branding throughout most of his journal entries.
Oh, yeah. There's a moment where he stops saying that he's got 2 things in his life: discipline and, oh shit, what's the other one? Insanity.
Yeah.
And it's always capitalized. And then about 2/3 of the way through, he realizes that D.I is not a working brand. And so he adds one. It's discipline, insanity, exile. And that, my friend, spells a word. And that is how you do a brand.
I think it's discipline and isolation, though, if I remember.
Oh, it's insanity.
Oh, it's insanity? Okay.
Trust me.
Yeah, well, nothing's cooler than being mentally ill, according to this book, at least.
He also capitalizes death throughout,
Yeah,
which is adorable.
It is so much of this book is the stuff that would get your parents called in for a conference, like in like 9th or 10th grade, when you're asked to do poetry, and I'm not speaking from experience.
No, exactly. And it's that kind of thing where, you know, when you see the goth or the punk teens in the wild and they're trying so hard and you just want to, like, you know, buy them a Slurpee and give them a hug and say, it's going to be okay, buddy, except that's really what they don't want.
Yeah.
So they kind of do, but they really don't.
It's like, don't worry, in 20 years, you're going to wear shirts with collars and not be mad all the time. And they're like, no, I'll never not be mad. I'm punk.
But you can still have integrity and you can still listen to, like, strident, repetitive, incoherent music. Look at me. I do it all the time and I love it.
The initial inception must be pure. All energy must be put to use. The end must never leave your sight.
Okay.
Etc. I mean,
there's a scene early where he just has joined Black Flag. I want you to keep that section running through your mind. He's just joined Black Flag, and he's not sleeping, and he's surrounded by really strong personalities, and he's not sure any of them like him, and they're jerking him around constantly, and they're not letting him sleep. That formally is a cult indoctrination process.
yeah.
And that thing you just read sounds like, well, my friend, that would come in a manifesto.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's the thing, right? Like, people, as you mentioned, people who know about Black Flag or were fans of Black Flag, one of the most common things that people know about them is that Greg was kind of a dick and kind of worked people to death and was notoriously difficult to get along with.
Right.
Throughout this book, Henry Rollins essentially worships the ground he walks on, says, you know, if it wasn't for Greg, this band would never have happened, which is true.
It's true.
But also, you know, he's the best musician I've ever met. He's one of the coolest people. I wish he liked me more. He doesn't like me. I don't know why. I love him. I think he's great. It's a little weird.
I mean, and let me just say, Henry, normally here I would say it's not you, it's him. In this case, I think it's probably about 60-40 him.
Yeah.
Because I don't think Greg likes any humans. And I don't think you were very likable at this point in your life.
Oh, no. And I mean, there's even an afterword where he goes, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that. We need another low point from you.
We do. Okay. So, probably the best. Well, okay. Black Flag had one guitar player throughout. That's Greg. He ran the band.
Yeah.
For a minute, they had two.
Yeah.
Right.
Dez played guitar for one tour, I think.
They had roughly infinite numbers of singers, bass players, and drummers.
Yeah.
Of the bass players, two mattered. The first was founding bass player Chuck. And Chuck actually comes across pretty well through this book.
Because he's smart enough to quit the band when shit gets crazy and just starts working at the label.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Chuck, I think, was a little bit older than most of them, a little bit smarter. He saw punk as both kind of a viable lifestyle, but also a set of artistic tools and practices, but didn't think that either of those necessarily needed to constitute an identity.
Yeah.
And just in general comes across as a pretty smart guy throughout. And since this is all heavily filtered through Hank, maybe some of that's not as true. But anyway.
Yeah.
Chuck, by the way, still out there playing weird music that literally no one is listening to.
Although every photograph of him, I have to say, made me cringe because his right hand technique on the bass guitar is something that one can only refer to as the dumb thumb.
Nobody ever called him a technician, I don't think.
Yeah, every picture of him playing, I was like, oh no, don't play like that.
The second bass player in Black Flag who mattered was Kira.
Yeah.
And as you may guess, Kira was a lady type person. And Kira comes in, I would say, for the shortest end of the stick, as in the passage I am going to read.
Oh, God. Okay.
Scotty started asking Kira if she would step in front of a bullet for certain people. When it got to me, Kira said she would not do it for me because I had shit on her in the past. Things can get kind of boring around here, so I guess you have to find ways to keep yourself amused. But you're cool, Kira. Keep out of the way of those bullets. And remember, look both ways before you cross a two-way street, or you might just get run over.
Yeah.
Now, this is about 10 pages after he was like, Jesus, I hate Kira. She is a terrible person. She is a good bass player, though.
I respect the hell out of her, is what he's... I don't like her, but I respect her. Which is what... I hate those kind of statements so much.
And this is about 30 pages before they play their last show together, and he spends the entire time verbally assaulting her.
On stage.
On stage. This actually, I believe, was a bit of a habit. If you listen to the Who's Got the 10.5 record, which I do not recommend you do.
No,
that's
it's bad.
That's mostly what it is.
Yeah.
Is Henry talking shit about Kira. And fuck you, dude. Like, I get that being in a van with somebody is putting nobody in a position to succeed, but in all seriousness, fuck you, dude.
Yeah, I mean, there's never a point where Henry steps back and thinks about the fact that, oh, this is a woman who is putting up with more shit than I am, probably, from these people, these fans who, quote unquote, are always trying to abuse me and grab me and blah, blah, blah. It's like, this is a woman in a hardcore punk rock band in 1984 that plays mostly to, like, proto-fascists and shit like that. She's probably getting a lot more shit than you are, Henry, but you're like so lost in your weird little journal writing world that he says later on she has something like Kira has no sense of reality, all of this. It's really upsetting. But to his credit, I will say, the 2004 afterword of this book, which is when it was last revised, includes probably 3 or 4 pages about how sorry he is for what a jerk he was to her and how he now recognizes what a huge contribution she made to the group and that they're friends again now. And he really, he wishes he could take back a lot of things that he had said and things like that. So I found that relatively endearing. It was a good reminder that Henry Rollins does not always stay this angry. Right. Which is good.
Is very good.
I don't know if he could have without self-destructing, and it also made me feel a little better about considering myself a Henry Rollins fan, because I was like, okay, he wasn't always this pissed off, so that's good.
If there had not been that little grace note at the end and that side of growth, I know I would have been even more unhappy with this book than I was. But I was, like you, very glad to read that.
Yeah. So my second low point is, kind of what I was saying earlier was just that, like, if you would have asked me then, and actually if you ask me now, I consider myself a fan of a lot of what Henry Rollins has done. I think some of his writing is very derivative, but I've enjoyed a lot of his spoken word, especially his later period stuff where he discovers the concept of, whoa, wait for it, humor. And I think he's very good at telling interesting and funny stories. I'd recommend a lot of his spoken word work to people, as well as his books of shorter fiction sometimes have kind of standout and cool little pieces to them. However, a lot of this book made me very uncomfortable to call myself a Henry Rollins fan, because removed from the growth that occurs later in his life, what you essentially have here is alternating between tour diaries and these weird little ultra-violent tableaus of things that are, obviously fiction, but presented in a very ambiguous way about killing animals, wishing people would get hit by cars, wishing he could shoot people, wishing he could shoot lots of people at once, which is not necessarily a fun sentiment to read about in today's day and age. Things like that, and it's gross. I mean,
it's
I
awful.
was an angry 20-something guy. I was not this angry. And I think a lot of it comes from a place, in retrospect, I think even Rollins would agree with this, comes from a place of extreme self-loathing.
Yeah.
I think what you have here, as I mentioned kind of up top, is someone who has some serious mental health problems, but is refusing to acknowledge them and blaming the rest of society. And throughout the book, I was screaming, "Henry, get help," while I was reading it, because I think, just seeing a therapist or something might have made a lot of his life a little bit easier to bear.
Well, and there's this very punk rock thing about enjoying self-loathing or taking pride in it.
That's true.
I think he's probably largely grown out of that, but that was a big, I would say, problem for him in his early days.
I think so. And I mean, there's also the issue of embellishment. Like, we don't know what was really going on in this guy's head, especially because he was being heavily influenced by authors like Henry Miller and writing stuff in these terse clip sentences and quite possibly exaggerating a lot of his feelings for the sake of creating this brand of Henry Rollins, the self-loathing, bad boy who hates society and just wants to do punk things. And so that's entirely possible too. It could just be a case of, I want to do punk things with my friends, because being bad is fun. But it's really, really tough to read. Yeah. And it really it kind of shook my faith in the work of a guy that I generally appreciate until that kind of coda at the end where I was like, oh, okay, yeah, he does grow out of this eventually.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah, it was.
But whereas, and just to kind of finish up this low point is, whereas Our Band Could Be Your Life, which I had recommended on the last episode, I said was a really inspirational piece about just kind of the power of do it yourself or whatever. This kind of functions as like an end cap to the opposite side of that, where do it yourself actually means go out and fucking drive yourself to like complete self-harm and to total breakdown for years at a time until you just explode, and it's horrible and the worst possible thing you could ever do.
There's probably something to be written about how this ties into the Protestant work ethic and how it kind of prefigured hustle culture in a little bit. Like, if you have to sleep, you don't want it bad enough, or whatever.
Yeah, there's some like Silicon Valley startupism vibes coming from the way Greg ran his band, for sure. Which is totally like, you need to live this.
If you're not sleeping under the desk, you're a bad person.
I mean, they lived at the office of their record label for a very long time, but they probably didn't have a cool like snack bar or like a ball pit or whatever they have at Google now. So.
Right.
All right, we need to do one more round of high points here.
All right, I'm going to do a high point that is what I think is actually just a very solid journal entry. Now, this is how you do a journal entry. 4/2/85. Just got back from another installment on my tattoo. Tonight was fill-in. Wasn't that bad. Some parts were real tender. The needle in your back. You feel it in your stomach. Needles. Lots. Drinking coffee. Dropped 3 Tylenol extra strengths. I could use some extra strength. I saw Desperately Seeking Susan last night. This is the movie with Madonna in it. It was a pretty good movie, I thought. Madonna was good. She reminds me of this girl I know. Fuck, she really does. It makes me think of her and the jerk I made out of myself. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. A man's got to do what a brainless idiot's got to do. Yeah, I guess that's my problem. And it goes on, but like, those are 2 of maybe 4 jokes he makes in the entire book. The extra strength thing and a man's got to do what a brainless idiot's got to do. And this is basically, and I think one of the reasons we're kind of sour about it, a completely joyless and all but completely humorless affair. Like, this is literally a guy who goes to see Spinal Tap and it bums him out.
Yeah, he's like, it's too real.
Yeah. So the few glimmers of actual humor and actual joy go a long goddamned way.
No, I agree completely. And I think for me, just this is a very vague highlight, but it's a decent one. A high point was, although the artwork on a lot of the flyers was disturbing, I did enjoy seeing the flyers because Henry he's not very interested in talking about the other bands that they're playing with unless they're bands he hates. There's a lot of instances of him throwing the opening acts under the bus, even if they're bands that are on tour with them, which I found to be very distasteful. You don't do that. That's shitty.
That said, Painted Willie did kind of suck.
Oh, they totally did. But, unless it was a band that was bad, he's generally not talking about who else played at the bill. So it was kind of interesting to look through these flyers and see, like, oh, Descendants played this show, or like, oh, Agent Orange played this show, or, it's kind of a who's who of early 80s punk. And it was fun to see who was on these bills.
Yeah.
However, unfortunately, frequently it was the same 3 or 4 bands that were not very good, that happened to feature members of Black Flag, one of which has a name that is so reprehensible, I'm just not even going to say it.
Oh, the one with the Black Flag Roadies band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Their roadie had a band with a horrible name who played lots of shows and appears to be nothing but sophomoric humor and bad jokes that revolve around race and sex. And Henry gets very mad at many audiences for not getting the jokes. Yeah. So
sometimes they just don't like your jokes because they're not funny, Brett.
I got the distinct impression that nothing here was super sophisticated. This is a band that on one of their flyers describes themselves as, quote unquote, the band that comes in your mouth, not your hand.
Right.
I don't get it.
Although, if you think about putting that on a flyer in like 1983, I mean, that would get you arrested now.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, so the high point for me was seeing a lot of these kind of who's who, especially on flyers where they were out of town. Like you'd see like Flipper pop up on like a San Francisco show or something like that. One of the few bands he has something positive to say about is Flipper, Saccharine Trust, St. Vitus. I think those are the only 3 other bands he gives props to.
That's true. Most of the book, when he's talking about other bands, is him name dropping and then being mildly disappointed by somebody he meets whose music he really likes.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Especially when they go to England.
While
there's a whole lot of like, finally got to meet so-and-so. Turns out he was a fucking poser.
Yeah, so he's mad every time he meets a influence of his or a musician he respects, while being a flaming bullshit dickhead to everybody who says, "I thank you for playing. I enjoy your music."
Yeah, there's a dichotomy at work.
Oh yeah, we forgot to pay off this check. What does Henry Rollins draw on something if he's mad or pissy about being asked to sign something or write on something?
Henry Rollins thinks the most subversive thing in the world you can do is to draw a swastika on something because, that's bad and against the rules. And I know this was part of the early punk movement in general.
Yeah.
I would venture to say that this was not necessarily something that carried through the 80s for most people and kind of lived and died in England with the Sex Pistols, and that Henry was still living a bit in the past. I have a hard time imagining, say, a member of the Minutemen getting mad about something and drawing a swastika on a window, say, perhaps.
Yeah.
Or on someone's torso.
Yeah.
Both of which Henry does in this because he's vaguely mad about a situation. I do not like that.
Nope.
So, yeah.
Stop it. You know who else needs to stop it?
Who?
Us. We should take a break.
Yeah, let's take a break. I'm getting mad. All right, welcome back. We're talking about the world's most angry Haagen-Dazs worker and his his exploits from the years of 1981 to 1986. And now we're going to do the segment where we, unlike some certain people, some authors who write extended tour diaries, like to have some fun and play some games. Games are for the weak. I don't believe in games.
I want to do a YouTube channel where it's just me and Henry Rollins playing Connect 4.
I mean, I'm sure now it would be delightful.
It might be fun now.
But back then, it would be like, I'm not going to play with your plastic toys. These toys are for children. I never got a chance to be a child. I was too busy hating society.
That's disturbingly accurate.
I got together with my friend Ian McKay. I don't have any friends. Mackay, sorry everyone. I'm the worst fucking punk rock fan ever. I just mispronounced that. I do love every time they're back in Washington. He's like, I hate it whenever we come here. It just reminds me of why I left. People call me a sellout for leaving. They call me a rock star. I hate it here. Then when he's not there, Ian never called me back. I wonder why. There's a really uncomfortable scene later on in the book where they're kind of at the apex of being Black Flag in capital letters, where he meets back up with HR from Bad Brains, who dresses him. He basically fucking dresses him down and is like, maybe you wouldn't feel so shitty all the time if you didn't work so hard and treat music like a fucking war, you know?
Right.
And Henry gets so upset that this guy from a band he looked up to is actually having fun playing music. It's cringy.
Yeah.
It's really, really cringy, especially considering the fact that, you know, the members of Bad Brains were African Americans and probably had to deal once again with a lot more shit than Henry Rollins did at their shows.
Ding, 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 ding.
But yeah, it's basically him saying, you need to chill the fuck out, dude. If you didn't take this shit so damn seriously, you wouldn't be so fucked up. And Henry just gradually being like, I realized he wasn't as serious as I thought, and it really disappointed me. It's like, ugh, gross.
He wasn't heavy. He was lightweight.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, but like I said, we're here to have fun now, like the children of society that we are, and we're going to play some games. The first one we're going to do is the most straight-laced, blue-collar disappointment segment in podcasting history.
Oh my God.
Dramatic readings.
Dramatic readings. We're gonna make it sound recorded. Dramatic readings. Yeah, I got some words for you.
First of all, I have to mention it in case it comes up in any of our dramatic readings because there's a chance that it might. This is a book at a time when people used the word straight not to refer to sexuality or gender identity, but to refer to whether someone was a square or not, whether they were living on the counterculture or, you know, part of the mainstream world, the straight world, as it were.
Right.
So if you hear that, please don't mistakenly think in your head that Henry Rollins is not a heterosexual man. He would not be happy with that at all. At least not this era of Henry Rollins. Just, you know, keep that in mind because it might come up. But I'm going to start out with something a little more lightweight. One of the tour diary-ish segments of this that's not just Henry in his own head ruminating about how much he hates everything, but an actual description of an event that occurred. It's a little long, but I think it's worth it.
Yes.
April 3rd, 1986, Morgantown, West Virginia. Played that show with Venom last night. I thought we played real good. When I came out on stage, I did some Satan raps and shit. The best one was, give me an S, give me an A, etc. What does that spell? Satan! It was hot. The crowd was into it. I said, Hail Satan, party hardy, and surf naked. We dedicated a few numbers to Satan and had a wicked good time. Venom took almost an hour to get on stage. They had roadies tuning their guitars and shit. Finally, they hit stage. They were hilarious. It was like seeing Spinal Tap. Their drummer had a guy that held an electric fan next to him and kept him high and dry, which is pretty hilarious. The singer bass player was named Kronos. He had some great raps. He got the crowd to chant what I thought was black funky metal over and over, which I thought was pretty cool. And then I thought that maybe I was wrong about these guys. I found out later that it was black fucking metal. Oh, excuse me. I expected them to go into Sex Farm Woman at any time. That's a Spinal Tap song. The guitar player was so bad it was painful. I had a great time. Joe, Sal, and I were hanging around in back saying, "Hail Satan" to people and prancing around like idiots. What a night. The bass player was hilarious. He would wiggle his tongue and roll his eyes, but he would also fix his hair every 15 seconds or so. After an hour of, "I can't fucking hear you," they said, "Good fucking night, New fucking Jersey," and ran for the dressing room. As Kronos was going to his motel-destined ride, Joe jumped in front of him and lailed a "Hail Satan" on his ass. The drummer came into our dressing room and asked Anthony if he knew who was responsible for the drums being all fucked up. He also said they were having problems with their wardrobe. Which, what? Loadout was great. All the Venom management and roadies were there, and we were staring at them, laughing and doing Spinal Tap Venom raps. They bummed out real bad, but they didn't say anything. I have a feeling there will be Venom raps going on around our camp for a long time now. Venom is weak. Everything about them was weak. They can't even play. They had a bunch of roadies to do everything. Weak, weak, weak. I would love to play with fucking heavy metal bands more often. It was fun crushing them. It's all lights and makeup. What bullshit. Venom suck. They are so full of shit. What a bad joke. They don't sweat, and they probably don't even fuck. The end.
Wow.
Which, admittedly, I mean, Venom was a pretty hilarious live act. I never got to see them, but there is a very infamous recording of them, much like with other bands, of just crowd interaction.
Yeah.
Which I believe you said you were going to link to.
Oh, I'm going to put that in the show notes for sure.
Venom is also considered by many to be the progenitor of American black metal. So they were pretty influential in a lot of ways. However, they were also weak, and probably didn't even fuck.
They might have been the first truly inept band to be truly influential. Before that, to be influential, you at least had to be good at something.
I was going to say, I don't know, man. There's also Black Flag.
But Venom was actually a tiny bit earlier, and not that many bands actually want to sound like Black Flag.
That's a good point. We want to sound really confused, like we don't know what band we want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a section as well. It's also going to be a little bit long. This is going to be 2 entries in a row, or at least excerpts therefrom.
And these are more kind of, if I'm...
Well, these are from The Road, but they're a more contemplative kind of road post.
Inside the mind of Rollins.
Exactly. Yeah. So, go to hrollins.livejournal.com.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
7/1985, Detroit, Michigan, at Tracks. I have a tape of the birthday party playing here a couple of years ago. I always wondered what this place looked like. The place is in one of those neighborhoods that are so fucked up that I'll eat at a McDonald's because the risk of food poisoning decreases somewhat. So there I was, eating at McDonald's. I'm going to skip over a couple of slurs.
Good idea.
Noisy children eating, screaming, and staring at me. I stare right back, right through them. I am bottomless. No guilt. No remorse. What? You're at McDonald's. I am ugly. I looked at myself in the bathroom of this place today. I looked bad, haggard, spent, used up, so I stared right back and through as I ate my fish sandwich. I remember now how bad the food is. Woke up this morning at 8:30 or so. Headache. Couldn't move my neck much. Still can't. Tried to cut down on my Tylenol intake. 2 sets last night. 2 sets tonight. I don't even know where we're playing tomorrow. I would bet Ohio or something. 7/22/85, Kentucky. In Kentucky, at the Jockey Club again. We've been playing every night. Detroit was hard. 2 sets was a bit much for that day. I thought we played real good, though. Got kicked in the mouth again. Found some cool Henry Miller books at a bookstore in Columbus this morning. I sent them to my P.O. box. I'm very burned out. I cannot remember the names of the books that I bought only 2 hours ago.
Maybe it's because you just got kicked in the head.
I cannot even remember all the towns we've been playing lately. Just too much burnout. Last night we played in Columbus, Ohio. I thought the show went real well. A girl bit me in the chest so hard that I bled. Now all that's left are bruises from her teeth. I took a walk around town today. Went to the local shopping mall to look for some food. There was a store selling those gross, mass-produced paintings. I stared at sailboats, misshapen nudes, and all the other gross shit they had. The standout was a portrait of the guitar player in Kiss. People sure are gross. I walked on the streets with my shirt off. People stared at me hard. I ain't my own tribe. I don't look or act like them. I'm sitting in this damp, dark, stinking hall. The place smells like piss, shit, beer, and mildew. Strange things happen to me these days. Hallucinations and visions and wild thoughts of all kinds. I don't know if I understand what's happening anymore.
Wow.
Why? So you went to the mall, huh?
Yeah. So, yeah. Also, your a line in that reminded me of something that was a constant bugbear throughout reading this, which is, according to every photograph of this book, the members of Black Flag and all of their friends are allergic to shirts.
Yeah.
There are very few pictures of this band that involve anyone but Kira wearing a shirt.
I mean, Henry looks fucking great.
I mean,
let's just say it.
Yeah.
At his prime, which is, roughly these years in this band, he looked fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, he's built like a professional bodybuilder. He has great hair.
Yeah.
He's an attractive guy.
He basically has Jimmy Page's hair.
Yeah, I mean, Henry Rollins is still a very well-built and attractive man, even at, age mid-50s, whatever he is now. He's never been, quote-unquote, so ugly I didn't want to look at myself.
Right.
But I think a lot of that, once again, is kind of the branding that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, of course people are going to look at this guy if he's walking around outside without his shirt on. He looks like a fucking model.
Yeah.
As previously mentioned.
Right. Yeah, he looks like a Speedo model.
Yeah, exactly.
He's got a, giant back piece at a time when that was not the most common thing for people to have.
Yeah, it's true. He definitely had a lot of tattoos before having a lot of tattoos was normal, and I'll give him credit for that.
Yeah. So, anyway, I'm sorry you didn't buy the velvet painting of Face Fraley, dude.
Yeah, you should have.
You should have.
It's just gross. The gross shit. There is also, I mean, you mentioned one instance of it, but there's like a runner about McDonald's in this. Henry Rollins hates McDonald's so much.
I guess if you're on the road, you probably don't like McDonald's that much. But he also has this weird fixation on 7-Eleven. He loves 7-Eleven.
That was the first thing he wrote for
McDonald's.
Spin was, this whole thing about kind of 7-Eleven's place in American culture. And there is a moment in this book when they're in Las Vegas and they end up at what turns out to be the first 7-Eleven, and he has essentially a messianic moment.
Right.
So
I think he drops to his knees.
He says, or actually he probably did, because he's a 22-year-old in a punk band, and when you're that age and doing that kind of lifestyle, you love to be loud and obnoxious and performative.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is weird that you can simultaneously love 7-Eleven and hate McDonald's. I do like his descriptions of Tampa, other than the racial dynamics of his descriptions of Tampa, which are horrible. But he does describe 7-Eleven as being one of the few food places around, which made me remember that 7-Elevens in Florida have Cuban sandwiches that they'll heat up for you behind the counter on a little panini press, and that was pretty good. However, I should mention right now, I didn't mention this earlier, I know somebody who is at one of the shows in this book. When I was a wee lad of maybe 15 or 16, in one of my first bands, we recorded at the cheapest recording studio in the Sarasota, Florida area, which was run by a guy who was an older ex-punk rocker whose band was mostly active in the late 70s and early 80s. I can't remember if they opened for Black Flag in Tampa or if they just went to see Black Flag in Tampa, but I was reading this book around the same time, and I was asking him about it, and he was like, that book is a bunch of bullshit, and went on to contradict. In the book, the narrative of the show is that there's basically like a skinhead faction battle between, skins who came from Orlando versus the Tampa skins, and the show had to get thrown out because there was just all these huge fights and blah, 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 whereas the story, as related to me by someone who was there, was like, yeah, there was like 3 people got in a fist fight, and I think Black Flag had to stop one of their songs early, but then they finished the rest of the set and it was pretty good. So It leads one to question the veracity of a lot of these over-the-top tales of audience violence, for sure. No doubt skinheads were a problem in the 1980s, and especially in Florida. I mean, it's been well documented. But I think a lot of these kind of tales of shows turning into full-scale riots may be a little influenced by a desire to seem more dangerous than one actually is.
Yeah.
Did just want to mention that I have a first-hand account that at least one of these tour diary entries is embellished somewhat. So, yeah.
Queer. So we have other games that we might like to play.
Well, let's save the rarest one for last.
Okay.
So let's just do a What Is Your Fave here. Here's a song.
What is your fave? What is your fave? When you're presented with a list of options, what is your fave?
Okay, so I'm gonna be honest here. We're just using this kind of as a clearinghouse to quote our favorite things that we haven't mentioned yet.
Exactly.
So, we're going to do so under the guise of saying, what is your fave or favorites cliche phrase in this book? Because there's a lot of them.
Yeah. So maybe we'll just alternate.
Yeah, let's just take turns.
Here's one of my favorites, which is a very cool move about seizing the rhetorical high ground and insulating yourself from criticism. In my opinion, the finest Black Flag record is the first 4 years compilation. It's all the singles and compilation cuts that the band made before I joined.
Yeah. Cool. So here's for me, describing the record's cover art said it all. A man with his back to the wall, baring his fists. Congratulations, you've just described every punk record made from 1981 to 1997.
If it's easy, you should read a few more lines there because it is maybe the funniest part of this entire book.
This was the cover of the first Black Flag album before Henry joined.
Yeah.
A guy named Mitch Parker gave my friend Ian Mackay and I a copy of Black Flag's Nervous Breakdown EP. We played it all the time. It was heavy. The record's cover art said it all. A man with his back to the wall, baring his fists. In front of him, another man fending him off with a chair. I felt like the guy with his fists up every day of my life.
Okay, his job at this time is hiring and firing and managing people at a Haagen-Dazs store.
Yeah, and hanging out in D.C. with Ian Mackay of the Teen Idols, the dude who sort of made it cool to be a vegetarian in punk rock.
I just really, really love that.
Yeah, it's true. He hadn't even entered the constant touring, constant introspection part of his life at that point in time. He was working at Haagen-Dazs in the basement office, feeling like the guy with his fists up all the time. Hey, far be it from me to question anyone's state of mind. Maybe he was having a really hard time of things, but that is really funny when you think about it.
That's fair. We had a show in L.A. in less than 2 days. We hauled ass across the country, sometimes not even stopping to use the bathroom. You went right out the window.
Cool.
But you hadn't heard of Gatorade bottles, my dude?
It was at this time that it became my understanding that the police were fucked.
She looked at me and told me to cheer up. I threw a folding chair at her. Get out of my room, Mom.
We have a single coming out on Posh Boy Records, which I only highlighted because Posh Boy Records is the home of Gleaming Spires, who created the wonderful song, Are You Ready for the Sex Girls? Anyway.
Imagine having to take shit from those minuscule fakes like Maximum Rock and Roll and Flipside.
Visited some friends. I wish I could take all my memories and put them in a book and then put the book on the shelf and take it down when I damn well pleased.
Thursday we hit it. We have to destroy them. If you want to destroy, you have to prepare. You have to practice. You have to learn your pain.
Laughing at me is like laughing at thin air. It makes me want to move to a place where no one lives.
Power is a dangerous thing. Organizations are evil. Unity is evil. Only a cowardly idiot would align himself with a unified faction.
I think that deep inside we are all running from something.
It would be nice to be touched by hands that didn't want to kill or congratulate me. Sometimes the hands that want to kill me are mine.
Later, now on the boat. This boat is huge.
When you work within your confines, when you realize your limitations, that's when you can break through them. Oh, wow. When did you become a football coach? Fucking John.
Totally. A lot of this is football coach rhetoric. Have not written in a few days. Fuck it. There's nothing to write about. The other night in New York, Allen Ginsberg, the poet guy, came to see us. I have one more.
Okay. I don't want to drink from their coffee pot. I don't want to catch their slowdown disease.
Strength from within, underneath my flesh. I don't hide behind art. Behind my eyes, I wait in ambush for you.
Life has no instruction manual. Parts and labor can be impossible to find. Many go down the road with parts that are in great need of service. A breakdown is eventual.
These people should just go get killed. It's a drag to have to put up with these people who should just be hit by cars.
For me, summer means a lot of grease, sweat, beating off, and feeling like they can't hurt me anymore.
All right, this is my last one. The streets lie. The sidewalks lie. Everything lies. You could try and read it, but you're going to get it wrong. All wrong.
I'm exhausted and full of shit.
Me too. Let's play a different game.
I got one more, sorry. Even assholes, even macho, self-serving chauvinist pigs get the blues. We do. We really do.
Or how about this? The most popular refrain in this book. At a Denny's.
Yeah. Must make more time for myself. Only one me. For me. Me. More me now.
I need more me. Come on, guys. Stop talking. You're talking about things that aren't me.
Hello, God. It's me, Henry. Can I get a little more me in the monitor of life?
Oh, I'm just going to say it right now. Yes, we are both familiar with Henry and Glenn Forever. You do not need to tell us about it or send us copies. It's pretty funny. Cool. There you go.
Thanks.
Let's move on to another game here. Let's go ahead and do Biggest Surprise.
Never run empty, we're vigorous guys. As the show runs longer and vigorous size. Got them hungry minds and the rigorous eyes. Let us tell you about this fucking book's biggest surprise. Boom!
All right, so sometimes things in this book rattle the foundation of our expectations. Word across the nation, like a PlayStation.
You're really shaking the foundations. Thank you. That was a third-tier AC/DC song.
Across the nation, like a PlayStation. It was one they did for Sony.
Which, oddly, you could only buy at Walmart. So I'm going to read something that, again, reading this book the way I did in 2 big chunks in 2 days as a man in his middle 40s, bad move.
Even worse move, I read this all in one go.
Oh, God.
And it ruined the rest of my day. I had to watch Agatha Christie, Miss Marple, for about 4 or 5 hours straight.
Kind of cleanse the soul.
Yeah, well, also, I mean, I was just filled with so much angry, toxic masculinity. I'm like, I need to watch a nice little old lady solve crimes for, it's the exact opposite of this. So.
I really need to watch the Case of the Purloined Haunted Tea Set right now.
I mean, literally, that's pretty close to one of the ones I watched.
So this game is a big surprise to me, but I will say, if you have to read this, it's probably an okay bathroom read. Just read a page or 2 a day over the space of a few years.
And watch yourself turn into an angry monster.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're in the bathroom. That's what happens to me. Oh, God, am I growing a tail? I'm so sorry.
Oh, God.
I'm so sorry.
If that makes it to air, I'm going to be real surprised.
Okay, so here's just a little section, or a little selection that jumped out at me after a while. I did this college interview today. I couldn't relate to the people asking the questions. They don't hear the wheel. They don't feel the blood in their veins. That's why I can't relate to them, and they can't relate to me. I no longer relate to the town. I don't feel alienated. I understand them at times, but I can't relate. The only person I can relate to is myself, and that's getting a little patchy. So after a while, I'm like, dude, you're talking an awful lot about whether or not you can relate. You really are an LA boy in the early 80s, ain't you?
Yeah.
And that really caught me off guard.
It's a really good point. I mean, he is originally from D.C., but he moves to L.A. to join the band and live in the shed.
Yeah.
And he takes on the trappings of L.A. very quickly and very thoroughly.
You can kind of see why when he goes back to D.C., people are like, you don't talk like you used to.
You also look like you go to Gold's Gym 5 days a week.
Yeah, exactly. So Henry Rollins, L.A. guy, was a big surprise to me. Did you have any surprises in this book?
Just a brief one, which is I'm going to read right now. Just got back from seeing Hanoi Rocks at the Electric Ballroom.
Yes.
I've never seen that many good-looking girls at one show in my life. It was painful. Hanoi was a cool band. The singer has all these different poses. He goes for some Iggy, some Bowie, and some Jagger. They rocked hard as shit.
Yeah.
Hanoi Rocks, noted hair metal band. Sunset Strip impresarios.
Yep.
Henry Rollins was apparently a giant fan of, all while deriding other punk bands as being posers and not punk enough.
I mean, about a page later, you can kind of see him trying to walk that one back. I mean, it's all fake, total poser bullshit. But man, that show was pretty good, though.
Yeah, whatever, dude. You owned all the albums.
Rollins
You know it.
on live music is not entirely to be trusted because he seems to think Black Flag was a good live band. Toward the end, he goes and really raves over the playing abilities of the Grateful Dead.
Uh-huh.
This is
Which
like our
is,
third
admittedly,
Grateful
this
Dead
is-
show in a row, but
Yeah, admittedly, this is a controversial issue, whereas a lot of people would, say the Grateful Dead were the best live band in the world. There are just as many people who would say the Grateful Dead were tuneless garbage. I fall into, I would say, the latter category.
and whether or not you like the Grateful Dead, even if you do like the Grateful Dead, I don't think anybody out there thinks it's because they're such virtuosic players. They play interestingly together if that's your sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it's not like they're out there breaking new ground.
That's a good point. But this is also a guy who was in a band with Greg Ginn for many years and considers him one of the best lead guitarists ever, despite the fact that Greg never apparently learned how to bend a note. So,
That's deliberate.
yeah. Oh, yeah, I know. So I've heard. He played with extra thick strings and he would have to slide and all this stuff. But, he is one of the most robotic sounding guitar players in the world.
I don't know, man. Side 2 of My War will fuck you up.
I 100% disagree. And that instrumental record they made is one of the worst things I've ever heard.
Instrumental Black Flag was not my particular favorite, nor is Henry Just Talking my particular favorite. That's one where you kind of need both the chocolate and the peanut butter.
Okay.
To me.
That's fair. Opinions are opinions, man. Except when I can't relate to them because
Yeah.
they're held by bullshit members. Truly, we do live in a society.
And after this episode, I am going to go polish my car. It does say Big Dog on the license plate.
Gonna sing along with some Hendrix even though you don't understand it.
God.
Because nobody understands Jimi Hendrix ever except for me because it's a thing that I like. So no one else who likes it understands it the way I do.
Which is actually one of my favorite running threads through White Men Can't Jump. And can white people like Jimi Hendrix the way black people do? It doesn't sound like that's a rich vein of humor, but to me, I found it welcome. Anyway, let's see if we've got any more games, speaking of rich veins of humor.
Well, we do, and it's one we very rarely get to do, but it jumped out to me immediately because I would say less than 100 pages into this book is the first time somebody compares Henry Rollins to Jim Morrison.
Yes!
And you know what that means. It's time for Jim Morrison's Being an Asshole Again, Henry Rollins version.
Do it.
Remember how it started? Can you remember when? The story's piled up, but now there's more we should have penned. And it's time to buy a journal, time to pick up a pen. Cause Jim Morrison is being an asshole again. Yeah, Jim Morrison's being an asshole again.
So, throughout this book, as I mentioned, people compare Rollins to Jim Morrison. One of the things that he says is, "Come on, guys, cut it out with the Jim Morrison comparisons. I'm a little sick of it by now. How about Cyndi Lauper or something unique or original?" Well, here's an easy reason why. You act and perform nothing like Cyndi Lauper and a whole hell of a lot like Jim Morrison. But my question to you is, since Jim Morrison is not in this book and we instead have an artist who whether intentionally or not,
Yeah.
draws deeply from the same well as Jim Morrison. What is your favorite example of Henry Rollins acting like a Jim Morrison-esque asshole?
Well, Jay, I'm so glad you asked. I feel the alienation running through my veins. I see the bread and water in my eyes. I think my flesh is turning to scar tissue. My brain is twitching, budding, singeing. I've outdistanced their lying, shallow lives. I've escaped their prisons, their nooses, their graves. I've not reached their mountaintops, but I've been dragged through their slums more than a few times. I stand on my own road, totally alone. The sun rises, warming my back. I am mine. I am the crawling king snake. I am my end. I am standing on the edge of my world, looking into my desert brain, listening to the dull roars and car crash sounds. Buddy,
That's the end.
that's the end. That's Crawling King Snake, which they also covered. Jim Morrison is being such an asshole again that he's writing his own lyrics and scenes from No One Here Gets Out Alive, like the car crash where the spirit of the dead Native American gentleman entered Jim Morrison's body in Rollins' journal. Now that's being an asshole again.
Well, yours is much more in depth than mine, because one of mine was, although Henry doesn't, he doesn't get deep into it, he does allude to the fact that he was fooling around with quote unquote chicks on the road a lot.
No way.
And at one point, he talks about how he was making out with a girl before a show.
Auga.
Just making out with her, and not much happened. He's like, after the show, I didn't even bother to try to find her. Why? It wouldn't matter anyway.
Aww.
And I was like, that's so Jim Morrison-y. But yeah.
Stop comparing me to Jim Morrison, said the shirtless man, running his fingers through his hair to make sure it feathers artfully around his face.
One of my favorite things in this book, though, and it's just a moment of pure, like, I feel like real Henry Rollins peeking through, is when they play in Athens and he hangs out with Michael Stipe for 2 days.
Yeah.
And it's like, Michael Stipe's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. He's really cool.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, you just spent like 200 pages like running down slur after slur about gay people, and then you hung out with Michael Stipe for 2 days and they're like, he's sweet and awesome.
He's a nice man.
Yeah, it's like, Henry, you're letting the crack show a little bit.
Dumbass.
Yeah, totally. But I liked...
He's probably not drawing swastikas on any of Michael Stipe's shit. I'll fucking tell you
Yeah,
that.
I just like to imagine that he becomes a totally different person when he's around Michael Stipe and they're just trading like tofu recipes and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Or like, Michael Stipe and Henry Rollins, like everybody else, have like private Instagram accounts, and they're just like showing each other the cutest kitties on
Look
on
at this
the
chonk.
internet.
I found this chonky Blubbasaur.
Yeah.
Pointy kitty is cute.
Yeah. Oh, he's mad. Oh, then he fell asleep. Yeah, Henry Rollins watching the baby duck fall asleep video 10 times in a row until he cries.
Yeah.
That's me.
Well,
That's my dream. That's my nightmare.
I think that about does it for games. So unless there's any more brutal and harsh takedowns of modern society you can think of that you need to level on an unsuspecting audience, I think it's probably time for us to take a break again. Take a break, like the weaklings that we are, who can't keep going 24/7 because discipline is not on our side.
We're coming back for a second set.
Oh, good, because I love discipline. Crawling out of the darkness that encircles all of humanity, especially people who are not exactly like me, a young white man who's muscly and in a punk band. It's time for us to move on. We're going to get out of the van, thank God, because it smells like dirty socks and anger in there.
Never get off the boat. Never get off the boat.
Yeah. So yeah, we're going to move to the part of the show where we talk about things that we actually enjoyed. Recommendations.
Not only venom and spite, sometimes with sweetness and light, and we always end the episode by telling you about a thing we like. Recommendations.
So for me, I'm gonna peel back the curtain. I had a really lazy week, and then I wasn't feeling super hot. And then let me tell you, I read all of this book at once. It took me about 5 to 6 hours. Yeah. And I was not feeling great to begin with. I've been having some struggles with feeling down. The holiday season always does it for me. Reading this book all at once when you're already feeling down, oh boy, that's not what you want to do. And so it left me with feelings of real badness, I guess you would say. I just kind of felt a lot like Henry feels throughout this book, I think. The world is shit, blah, blah, blah. So what I did was I turned on my old streaming TV service, and I watched some of the delightful television movies in the Agatha Christie Presents Marple series. This is not to be confused with Miss Marple, the television show. These are I'd say they're about an hour and a half long. It's just called Agatha Christie Marple. They're more modern. It's really fun to watch because they're kind of lots of people pop up in them that you will recognize before they were famous, like, say, a Benedict Cumberbatch or a Natalie Dormer, which it's really interesting to see them kind of play roles before they were very famous. And on top of that, it's about a sweet old lady helping people solve inconsequential mysteries for the most part. And it was exactly what I needed to spend about 3 hours of my life immersed in. It's kind of like the warm bath to the cold shower that was Henry Rollins. So, yeah.
Now, how modern are we talking? Is Miss Marple a granny who, say, raps?
No, I mean, Miss Marple is still the same character. I will say that they definitely went overboard on the font purchasing side of things. And so the title screens are hilarious. I even posted one on our Twitter. They use the Full House font exactly for the cast members, and then every single one of the actual title cards that come up is in some kind of different crazy font treatment that looks literally like, I don't know, Do the Right Thing or something like that. Maybe a little bit after that. Like, one of the episodes is based on the story. They do it with mirrors. Okay. So the two R's, one of them is reversed.
Fuck yeah.
And it's all like the font name, like horror show, bold, right, or something, you know, like the mirror cracked. And then it's all like a grunge font that's torn apart. So I didn't actually look, but I would say probably early to mid aughts.
Okay.
It's not the original Miss Marple series is much older, kind of shot in that 4:3 aspect ratio that sucks. This is a lot easier to get your head around in modern days. Although I will say the camera's a bit gauzy. It's a little weird, but it is what it is. So either way, the stories are very, very enjoyable, very much the opposite of this. So yeah, I'd recommend also too, if you're a fan of cozy mysteries, as am I, why not watch the coziest of all mysteries, the Jane Marple series?
Right.
Yeah.
So, I really hope that you like my CW Marple that comes out next year.
Oh no. Yeah, she's going to be 22 and smoking hot.
I mean, I just got 3 words for you, buddy. Marple whomst fucks.
There are a couple moments in this where, you know, characters make slight double entendre, and they will cut to Miss Marple making like a knowing nod or a little wink. And those made me laugh a lot.
Miss Marple just like doing the like little crotch thrust.
Yeah, the pelvic thrust with a little awooga.
Yeah.
Because as we all know, a staple of the parlor room mystery is the secret affair.
Oh, fair.
You know,
fair point.
And Marple definitely, anytime that happens, plays directly to the camera, like, "Oh, they were doing it."
oh my! Yeah. Fans herself a little bit. I have a similar tale to tell. Alas, this book bummed me out. You know, when you were trying to schedule the episode, I was like, I don't know if I have time to record. I'm going to drink coffee, black coffee. Then I'm going to do push-ups and masturbate, which is a parody of Rollins that my friend Red said in about 1991. And to my knowledge, has never been bettered. So good job, Red.
I'm really glad now that you mentioned that, and I hate to go back to talking about the book, but I'm glad that Henry Rollins was in this point of his career in the era he was, because if he was in this mind state now and a young artist, he would be encouraging the worst people to do horrible things, whether or not he realized it. Like, he would be an incel hero, essentially.
He would not be in a punk band. He would have a YouTube channel and talk about red pilling a lot. Yes. And he probably would never grow out of it. Which is a tragedy that I'm glad did not happen in this case.
Exactly. I'm glad he kept his anger firmly in the 80s.
So my recommendation is a similar deep dive into the exact opposite mindset of Monsieur Rollins. And it is a book. It is not a TV show, although, yes, I did watch the TV show. And the book is called Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. It's by Samin Nosrat. It is not quite a cookbook. It is not like a list of recipes. It's not even a congeries of recipes with some little anecdotes. It's mostly very approachable food science from the standpoint of flavor. And I learned more reading the first bit about salt than I had in the last couple of years of cooking, when it's been one of my main hobbies and something that I spend a lot of time doing. It's great. She's an incredibly engaging writer, and even as a weenie vegetarian, I'm not particularly well served by most of her illustrations of the principles, because I don't put meat in my food, kids.
Yeah.
Even adjusting for that, learning a lot, really enjoying it, and could not recommend it more highly. So, Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, Samin Nosrat. It's
cool.
rad.
All right. Sometimes I get letters that I don't even want to write back to people. Another thing that happens a lot in this book. But sometimes we get letters and we do want to talk about them to you. So here's some letters.
A, letter B, letter C, letter D, letter E, letter M, letter G, letter. Got a lot of letters.
So this is a rare all physical mail edition.
Ooh.
Very exciting.
Just like in the 1980s.
Yeah.
I walked to the P.O. box. People were staring at me because I'm so punk and weird.
I mean, I do genuinely love a trip to the P.O. box. Here we go. This is from Denise, fake last name, but who has signed herself Denise the Underdarkiest. So I think I know not where this is going, but where it's coming from.
More drizzed shit.
Greetings, Podsters. I offer you a few things to brighten your doubtless gloomy winter days. First, I remember one of you being an inveterate dog-earer, so have some bookmarks.
That's me.
I really wanted a reason to order from Paperback Paradise, and this seemed as good a reason as any. And Jay, you mentioned origami, so I couldn't resist when I saw the crab paper.
Oh.
So you've got a couple of squares of crab paper, and take a look at these bookmarks.
I know several different forms of origami crabs, so perhaps I will make a crab out of some crabs, or maybe several different crabs out of crabs.
Yo, dog, I heard you liked crab in your crabs, so we put some crab.
This is the best bookmark ever. It just says, I'd rather be watching TV. And the only thing I like more than reading books is fucking. Oh, these are great.
Don't put that one out at work, kids.
Thank you so much.
I also listened to your bonus episode about the Legend of Drizzt and the repetitive prose, and oh man, do I have a book for you. Both of you, enclosed, literally. About the book. This series has 12 books, and if they're all as tedious as this first offering, I weep for my favorite genre. I got about 100 pages into this slim volume and gave up, assuming the writer had Tourette's and his compulsive word was nightside. My
Sorry,
husband.
I was just thinking about a Killers parody. Mr. Nightside.
Mr. Nightside,
Yeah.
that would be good. I think Nightside skate tricks were my specialty.
Oh, yeah.
back when I was still riding a skateboard.
Yeah, I used to do the dark slide all the time.
Yeah.
It's one of the few tricks you could do without being good at skateboarding.
My husband liked these books and read a bunch more, so your mileage may vary. I don't remember you guys doing much urban fantasy aside from vampire $. So I'm interested in how this strikes you. I know The Pit has a lot of fans who would also welcome a foray into the genre. Mercifully ending this because my cat is trying to eat this as I write. Thanks, Denise, the Underdarkiest.
Okay, so yeah, that's true. Urban fantasy is something that I would say, don't necessarily stay away from on purpose. I just have little exposure to the genre, so I don't know what's good and what's bad. So this is great. Now we have a good example of something bad, and perhaps we could talk about it at a later date.
As far as I know, this is the cover to every urban fantasy book because it's a character with some gleams coming out of his head. He's wearing
A trench coat.
He's clenching his fists like that Arthur meme, and he's in an alley, and there's a full moon in the background.
That's true. The only thing that's missing is like maybe some kind of like angel or devil wings.
Oh, that's probably you have to angle it.
Oh,
it's probably
it's
one of those.
Renticular. That's the word, right?
I think it's lenticular.
Lenticular. I just think of it as the one cool card in your Topps pack.
Yeah,
Or was it?
Sure.
Yeah, it was Topps or Fleer. Fleer made the shitty ones that didn't have the version of those where it's like the bat's on his shoulder. Now the bat's not on his shoulder. The bat's on his shoulder. Now the bat's not on his shoulder.
David, if you're listening, please feel free to write in and correct our bad, faulty memory.
Yeah,
of,
I can't remember whether it was
baseball
Topps
cards.
or Fleer that had those, but only one of them did, and I was always disappointed when I got the ones without them.
And we have a second physical letter.
Oh, was it Upper Deck? Maybe I always forget there was a third player in the world of baseball cards.
True. But really, Upper Deck specialized in upper deckers.
Okay,
That's poop where it doesn't go.
I know.
Hello to the fellows of IDEO TV. I hope this letter and its two presents find you well all the way from Australia,
Well,
the land down under.
doing about as well as I can considering I read this book in one day, but yeah.
As a listener and friend of the podcast, I wanted to send something to the P.O. Box and have enclosed 2 compact cassettes, one for each of you. Jay's is inspired by an Akewood comic.
Oh, yes.
And his Beef's Gym mixtape, which consists of Leonard
I know
Cohen's
this. Leonard Cohen, Suzanne, 7 times per side.
7 times per side. And yes, if you are to play this cassette, you will find I did, in fact, record it 14 times.
Sweet. I'm going to go start working out right now and become Henry Rollins sized.
Having made this cassette, I felt I needed to also give Chris something special, so after asking him, I have filled a 90-minute tape with Tyranny and Mutation and Secret Treaties. Neither tape has been recorded with Dolby, as I am unsure if your cassette decks have it. It's not a given these days, and yes, I assume you still have cassette decks, so enjoy them in all their tape hiss glory. Your friend, Reese, fake last name.
I do, in fact, have a cassette deck with Dolby, but it is my duping deck, which is a pain in the ass to hook up and listen to. And my day-to-day listening deck does not have Dolby, so that is awesome.
And
the Leonard Cohen one is amazing. It looks exactly like the Akewood tape, it is one of my favorite panels. For those of you who don't know, Akewood is one of the few webcomics that had a dialogue search engine, so you could probably just go to akewood.com, and down in the bottom there somewhere there'll be like a search dialogue, and just search for Leonard Cohen, you'll find it.
Yeah, and I'll probably put a link to that in the show notes as well.
Thank you very much.
But yeah, it's amazing. You got a rather lovely TDK 60. I got an equally lovely TDK D90. So,
I miss these nice tapes, but I got to be real. Most of my cassette tapes that I dubbed on came from the dollar store and didn't have cases, so I would just cannibalize. Like I'd go to what was it, Camelot Music or whatever, where they had the tapes that were they'd sell for like a nickel each that had the little notch cut out of the side.
Oh
of the
yeah,
thing.
loved those.
And I would buy them just for the cases, so that I could dub tapes of my shitty band onto Dollar General store tapes that didn't have cases, then reuse those like like, 10 for $1 cases to actually put our Xeroxed insert into.
The case being the actual only part of that had been damaged, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
The tape store that I bought most of my tapes from was Sound Warehouse in Aurora, Colorado. And they would sometimes drill the notch or carve the notch. I assume it was probably a hacksaw or something.
Yeah.
But sometimes they would just drill holes in them too. And I was always afraid that they were going to drill a little too deep and I was going to get a fucked up tape. I don't think I ever did.
Yeah, no, this place just took a little notch out of like kind of the spine of the tape towards the bottom. And so they were totally reusable, although everyone who saw them knew immediately where they came from.
Exactly.
But I mean, who cares when your band is horrible and you record it on a 4-track and your artwork is all black and white Xeroxed.
But enough about Black Flag.
Oh shit! Yeah, that's right. I was punked too. And let me tell you about my journaling. No, thank God I didn't keep a journal back then.
Man. Or thank God we all lost them in the fires.
Yeah, I was a little more on the wacky end of punk anyway. So I was more interested in like the Dead Milkmen and stuff during my punk phase. So it probably would have been more little more lighthearted than this. Although they hated the Squares too.
You were more of a Psychotic Norman type fan.
Exactly.
Right. So, hearkening back to Denise's letter, she mentioned a couple of things that I think are worth going into. One was the Party Pit, which is our Facebook group, which, as she mentioned, is a place where people get together and sometimes talk about urban fantasy, which is not anything I know about, and sometimes they share pictures of cute animals, which is something I know about.
Yep.
So you can find that on Facebook if that's your jam. If you would like to write to us, please do so at idon'tevenowntelevision@gmail.com. If you want to hear what all the fuss is about Drizzt, because motherfuckers act like they forgot about Drizzt, you can also do so on Patreon. That's a subscription service where you can pledge us a little bit of money, and every single month you will get a bonus episode.
Or as I like to call it now, the Drizzted shit.
Oh, God. Do you remember when we saw Drizzted Root a few years ago?
Amazingly, I've been listening to a podcast about Woodstock 99, and they just reviewed the Rusted Root performance, and one of them compared the singer's vocal performance to when you're watching Beavis and Butthead starts making fun of the singer, which is so accurate that I laughed. I mean, I was eating ramen, and I laughed so hard I choked.
Yeah. Ramen comes out of your nose and not just the fluid. It's a bad scene, but it's a good line. Do you remember that month where Letterman would not stop singing the vocal hook from that one Rusted Root hit?
Yeah.
Man, that was a weird fun. It was like, I've been downhearted, baby. Or some shit. It was insane. I hated it. So if you want to see what all the fuss is about Drizzt, head on over to the Patreon. There's, I don't know, I think we're up to like 40 episodes or something incredible, all of which you get access to if you pledge at the $5 a month level.
Yep.
Really helps us with the show. We had a moment of ice cold fear grip our very entrails this week due to Mac not always playing nice with recording technology. And the fact that so many of you have reached out and supported it meant that even if we absolutely had to, we could just go spend a little money and fix the problem. That means a lot. So thank you very much.
Yeah, but we didn't have to. However, the fact that was a possibility did prevent a minor anxiety attack on my end. So that's good.
And that's quasi-minor one on mine. So, I think that's about it. We've recommended stuff. We've read cool letters. We've gotten presents in the mail.
Yeah. Awesome. So I guess until next time, everybody, Happy New Year once again. And why not ride the van?
Oh.